Hey, do you know what time is it? Yes, spooky season is here. And today, I'm gonna tell you a Mexican legend for Dia de Muertos.
The Lady of the Cemetery.
In a small village hidden among the mountains, the people celebrated Dia de Muertos every year with deep devotion. Families gather in the cemetery, decorating the graves of their loved ones with marigold flowers, candles, and altars filled with sugar skulls, bread, and the favorite foods of the deceased. But there was a legend that haunted them all. The story of the Lady of the Cemetery. It was said that on the night of November 2nd, a mysterious woman dressed in black would wander through the cemetery. She wore a rebozo that covered her face, and her eyes, if anyone dared to look, were empty like deep, dark wells. In her pale hands she carried unlit candles. It was whispered that anyone who met her gaze would lose their soul and be trapped between the worlds of the living and the dead. Years ago, a young man named Julian arrived in the village. He was a newcomer, working as a builder, and had no family in the area. When the locals told him about the Lady of the Cemetery, he laughed at them.
Ghost stories for children.
He scoffed,
I'm not afraid of the dead.
determined to prove the legend was nonsense. Julian decided he would visit the cemetery alone that night. As everyone slept, he climbed the stone wall of the graveyard. His plan: steal some candles and food from the elders.
After all, what harm could come from taking offerings meant for the dead?
It was around 3 in the morning, and the cemetery was silent. Only the wind stirred, making the marigold petals flutter across the graves. Julian wandered among the altars, pocketing fruit and chocolate to himself. But then the air grew cold, and a thick fog began to creep across the tombstones. That's when he saw her. A tall woman draped in a black shawl, standing by a lonely grave. She didn't make a sound, but Julian felt her empty gaze pierce through him. His hands trembled, but he forced himself to call out.
Hey, what are you doing out here alone? Are you one of those spirits everyone's so afraid of?
The woman didn't answer. Instead, she extended her hand toward him. In her palm, she held a sugar skull with a name written on it.
Julian.
A chill ran down his spine. Panic flooded his body, and he tried to run, but his legs refused to move. The woman began to walk toward him, slow and deliberate, and as she did, the candles on the altar started to go out, one by one. Julian's breath hit as the fog thickened, wrapping around him like a cold embrace. His vision blurred, and he felt as though his body was dissolving into the mist, dragged into a world he could not escape. The next morning, the villagers returned to the cemetery to find the altars in disarray and all the candles extinguished. Near an old, forgotten grave, they discovered a sugar skull lying among the wilted flowers. On its forehead was the name
Julian.
They searched for him throughout the village, but Julian was never seen again. Some said the Lady of the Cemetery had taken him to the realm of the dead for disrespecting the offerings. Others whispered that a new figure now roamed the cemetery during Dia de Muertos, a pale man in worker's clothes, with hollow eyes, just like the lady's. From that day on, no one dared enter the cemetery after midnight. The villagers tell this story every Dia de Muertos to remind children to honor the offerings and respect the dead. Because on these sacred nights, the border between the living and the dead grows thin, and those who cross it might
Never return.